upbringing with Christianity.
Well, religion tainted you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's religion on the one hand, and then God on the other.
Yeah.
There's Buddhism and Buddhist followers.
You know, I try to separate religion and spirituality. To me, they're tremendously different. One is, and there are a lot of great religious leaders on this planet. There's no mistake about that. But it's also, in many cases, it's deceived us. They've manipulated us. They've taken advantage of humans. They've scared us into believing certain things. So I think it's got its problems too.
Oh yeah, I don't hold the thesis that religion is the cause of all wars and so forth. I think something like the New World Order or Illuminati would be responsible for all those deep problems. But yeah, religion is responsible for one great theft. I mean, our God is ecstasy. Human life is meant for ecstasy. Go study the American Indians 200 years ago and tell me that's not true. And this is what religion has stole from us. We're supposed to believe that Christianity is just merely about belief. Well, if that's true, why did St. Paul on the road to Damascus fall down in a spiritual, ecstatic trance? Okay, that's spirituality, not religion, like you were just saying. The same could be said of the point of Buddhism is to change your humdrum, boring old everyday consciousness into sheer bliss. Hinduism has the same message. So that is the biggest thing I think religious leaders have taken from us. Is they've made religion look. I think the Dalai Lama is the best example of this. He makes religion look like sort of a political idea set, and that's absolutely not what it is. It's an experience of absolute holiness in you. All of you, every single person listening has this, and deep down, whether you know it or not, what you want more than anything is this deep satisfaction and joy. And this is the exact thing now most people on the planet don't know exists and what we're supposed to be seeking.
So at this point in your life, 100% convinced that there's intelligent design here?
Yeah, I have to be from what I've seen. I mean, I've got a whole list of. I mean, I've done so much analysis into all this intelligence all over that. Yeah, it's a two-part designing. It's humans or other entities in the cosmos like us. I don't know if animals can do. This is what telementation is with your feeling level of your consciousness, not your thought level. Your feeling level of your consciousness, you create reality, and there is no joke here. Beyond this is testable, experimentally verifiable. William Tiller has written whole books on this. Other professors have, and this is studied by the Russians in the 1920s, American universities in the 20s and 30s. There is, anyway. To answer your question, though, yeah, there is design everywhere. The essence of our existence is design. A synchronicity is an example of design. I mean, if we live in a random universe, it's not design. How can synchronicities happen? If you really pay attention to your life and they're just on autopilot and you're really watching the events of your life, synchronicities are absolutely unbelievable. They are so prevalent, so outrageous and amazing that you almost want to fall down in amazement. But you have to be paying attention. You can't be, thinking about, the latest television show or something. You have to be watching the events of your life. Everything has like a code and is lined up together. I mean, take DNA. This is one of the best examples, George. DNA has what's called junk DNA.
Right.
Silly name. It's the non-coding, so-called non-coding part of DNA. I don't know if I believe that it is non-coding, but anyways, it's the majority of DNA. Now, it was found out. Again, this is something academics discovered. Even though they don't focus on it, they should. They discovered it and kind of put it on the shelf then. It was found out that the pattern of the little pieces of the DNA, the junk DNA, it was found if you take those and assign them, and find out what the pattern is and their relation to one another.
And there is pattern.
Yeah, and it exactly, George, is a language code, a human language code. In other words, if you take human language and say, okay, what's the base of all languages, and what they all share in common, and find a code in that commonality. And people have done this for, this has existed for 20 years. ZIPF, Z-I-P-F, is one of the first pioneers to do this. You find a code. That code is exactly in human DNA. This is the most unbelievable information that there is. There is such planning here. This has all kinds of ramifications. Language is an aspect of consciousness. George, why would DNA have an aspect of consciousness built into it? Does that imply consciousness is a lot more far-reaching than we originally thought? And why DNA? DNA is a crystal. It's sort of a light energy molecule with all kinds of, it's got the golden ratio built into it, all kinds of interesting number patterns which imply design and so forth. So a lot of this isn't discussed by academics, but they're the ones discovering this stuff. It's almost like in academia where I work, they have all their theories. They make their discoveries, which are extraordinary. And then they have their theories, which almost destroy a lot of that in a lot of ways. I mean, there's been discoveries lately, which now I know a lot of your listeners believe in the theory of evolution, and that's great. I don't, from things that academics have discovered. They've actually discovered things like it's called punctuated equilibrium. We can discuss it later if you want, but completely undermine the whole idea of evolution, not just human evolution for other animals with primates, but all of evolution. But they don't see this yet. It's because, they've made the discoveries, but their theories, they have a theory in their mind. Evolution is true. So they can't get past the theory to see the empirical information.
Let me ask you about something you write about quite a bit, dark ecstasy. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I was hoping you'd bring that up. That's, I think, maybe the most important issue there is. I think telamentation and dark ecstasy, in my opinion, are the most important issues. Now, there's a friend of mine at a radio show called Black Helicopter Radio wrote, he has a quote of mine on his website. It's dark ecstasy I was reading it here, dark ecstasy is the spirituality of the Illuminati and a force that has, to a degree, been implanted into humans, where humans have a capacity to develop spiritual euphoria surrounding artistic experiences of genuine sadomasochism, death, murder, war, and pain, and so forth. Dark ecstasy, spiritual euphoria becomes addictive and is triggered by art forms in the world, is the opposite of the experience that someone has of joy of nature, such as the ocean surf. Now, somebody might have to go back and listen to that again in the archives or something, but in a nutshell, what that is there is, this is heavily related to what we were talking about earlier, about the mysterious nature of God in a disturbed world. There is some kind of force or something that humans either are infected with or have the ability to apprehend, which is very, very dark. I mean, serial killers have reported that in their crazy rituals of dissecting bodies and so forth, all of a sudden, for some reason, there's a total physiological euphoria and ecstasy in them. Now, George, why would that be the case? Now, let me just tell you, if you have, unless you want to change direction here, let me tell you very quickly why I know about this. I fell into this, and a lot of people I found out have. When I started writing about this and doing, YouTube broadcasts and stuff on this, I found out lots of people know exactly what I'm talking about. And the only way you can know what I'm talking about here is if you have a taste of it. And basically, it seems like incredible amounts of people have. It's just a sort of idea that all these things that should not be joyful, like suicide, abortion, riots, acts of pain, hurting animals, acts of complete non-empathy and so forth, why these will develop a strange ecstatic joy within a person. Okay, now, and that's strange that that's there, especially if we're in an intelligently designed cosmos with an all-loving God. So it almost implies something else has tainted us at some point. For the same reason that half of the front part of our brain seems to be shut off in various ways and inactive, that seems like somebody or something tampered with us. So this is another way to look at it. Why would intelligently designed beings have this darkness in them? Now, the real point about dark ecstasy, this is just what I started calling it, dark ecstasy, that I fell into this back in my Buddhist days for a number of reasons. And again, that's how I discovered this exists. But when you discover it exists, you see that the whole world seems to be operating according to this. Now, why would a movie like Sin City, which has in it, there's discussion of, there's a serial killer in the film who discusses that the serial killing, the act of it, reduces a white light and makes the serial killer feel the power of God. Now, I don't know what God they're talking about, but the point is they're talking about exactly, in one of the most popular movies made recently, exactly to nitty-gritty details of what this thing dark ecstasy is. Now, lots of movies, Shutter Island talks about this, the Resident Evil film, Silence of the Lambs, Natural Born Killers, and so forth. Then you find other things like Hurricane Katrina. When you're in the dark ecstasy mode, when I hope people don't go there, but when you're in it, you can sort of see that it's an art form. It's something in the world will happen. There will be a piece of art, whether it's a riot or a war or a nuclear bomb or a piece of a film or a piece of Picasso's art or something, and it will trigger in your consciousness a sort of euphoria. Now, this is discussed in Zen Buddhism, not the dark, but in light ecstasy sense. Zen Buddhists will say, you can be doing your meditation and go out for a walk, and all of a sudden, bam, the most beautiful song of a bird you hear suddenly from the tree above you, and it just pushes you over to the edge into spiritual enlightenment. So there's this idea out there that the environment can create ecstasy. Now, in the Buddhist sense, it's in the environment of nature and beautiful things that can do that. But there's a dark aspect of this too, where sadomasochistic, murderous art can trigger someone into the dark ecstasy. That again, it's mysterious that it exists. Now, when you start to recognize these forms of dark ecstasy in the world, and I'm going through this quickly. I made a whole film about this, three-hour film, but you find out that the whole world seems to be, video games. The best example is wars. These things feed a spiritual frenzy, a dark spiritual, artistic, sadomasochistic frenzy. So, and it appears now, how could this be the case? Why would the whole world, for strange reasons, be steered in this way, if I'm explaining this clearly enough quickly here? And the only answer I can come to that is there's a dark force behind it, doing it, as if there is an Illuminati, which I think there is, dark magicians behind the whole thing.
No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is their religion, and their world is their art. Remember how I just said the world triggers the ecstasy? Well, they must be using the whole world to do this. Their secret underground prisons of torture and so forth. Like in the movie, what's that one movie that was out? I can't remember, the crazy torture movie about the person in the secret prison in Europe. One of the most popular movies. I just happen to forget the name. So it seems like Hurricane Katrina is such a perfect example. I mean, all the riot and the frenzy. Remember Jim Morrison? He was sort of like, an amateur, not a professional dark ecstatic, I don't think, like the Illuminati, to put it in funny terms, but sort of like I think David Lynch, the filmmaker, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, and so forth. I think he's like an amateur dark ecstatic. Jim Morrison would try to create riots because it was an art form for him. He would read, literature by Hitler and social control and so forth, and try to figure out how to make his concerts turn into riots because that was what's beautiful to him. So that's like flirting with dark ecstasy. So I don't know, I hope I'm explaining this right, but this is, if you want to understand how the world works, this is it, I think. I mean, why is the world so, yes, there's the aspect of how can a God-created universe allow this. That's one issue, but putting that aside for a second, to just by brute force understand why our world is the way it is, this seems to be the best theory.
All right, well, we're going to come back with you in just a second, Jeff. Fast hour, 2 more to go with you. When we come back, I want to talk about the law of attraction. I want to get your take on what it might be through the eyes of a philosopher and how it might work. Much more to talk with Jeff about when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. And if you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com.